Hello and welcome. Find a comfortable position. Let the weight of the day settle, and allow the room around you to gently fade. Tonight, we are not going to grand battles or political intrigues. We are going somewhere quieter, somewhere familiar yet very far away. We are going to spend a night in the home and the bakery of a Roman baker. Imagine the gentle, rhythmic sound of kneading dough, the steady, comforting heat of an oven. The simple, satisfying scent of bread has filled homes for thousands of years. This is a story of routine, of flour-dusted hands and the quiet darkness before dawn. It is a story of daily life, repetitive, predictable, and deeply human. A story perfect for quiet reflection or for gentle sleep. So, let your mind settle, and let us walk slowly through the silent streets of a sleeping Roman town to where our story begins, in the deepest part of the night, when the stars are still bright and clear over the rooftops. The city is quiet. The wealthy in their villas, the poor in their insulae, those tall apartment blocks, all are asleep. The forums are empty. The baths are cold. The air is cool. It carries the scent of damp earth from the garden plots outside the town walls, and the faint, stale smell of yesterday's city life. Oiled bodies, animals, smoke. In one particular home, our baker, let's call him Marcus, sleeps. He shares a simple room with his wife, Elia. Their children are in a small alcove nearby. The room is spare. A bed frame with a mattress stuffed with wool or straw. A wooden chest for their few tunics and cloaks. A small household shrine, the Narration, with its little clay figures of the household gods, the Laras. They stand guard in the dim moonlight that slants through the small, high window. Marcus's sleep is deep, but it is not the sleep of a rich man who can linger in bed. His body is his clock. In the pitch black of the Hora Corda, the fourth watch of the night, something pulls him awake. It is not a sound, but an inner knowing. A pull from the fermenting dough in the next room. He breathes deeply once, and his eyes open. He lies still for just a moment, listening to the soft, regular breathing of his wife. Then, with a quiet exhale, he moves. He swings his legs over the side of the bed. The packed earth floor, covered with a simple reed mat, is cool. He feels for his tunic, a simple rectangle of undyed wool with holes for his head and arms. He pulls it over his head. It falls just above his knees. Next, his apron, a square of much coarser, tougher linen. He ties it around his waist. Feels familiar. It is his uniform. He pads quietly into the main room of their dwelling. He might take a sip of water from a clay jug. It tastes of the clay itself and of the cool night. He has not lit a lamp yet. He knows this space by touch and by memory. He pushes aside the heavy curtain that separates the living quarters from the work area. And here the smell changes. It is the smell of his world. The smell of dry flour, of old yeast, of warm, damp stone and wood. Now he strikes a flint. The spark catches on a bit of oil-soaked lint. He lights the wick of a small, simple terracotta oil lamp. The flame sputters, then steadies, casting a small, golden pool of light. It is enough. He lifts the damp cloth from the large, shallow mixing trough, the machina. He looks at the dough within. He doesn't just see it, he listens to it. He can hear the faintest, softest bubbling, like a distant, slow stream. He puts a flour-dusted hand on its surface. It is alive. It is warm with its own internal activity. The fermentum has done its work through the long, quiet hours. It is ready. He takes a deep breath, taking in the familiar, sour, wholesome smell. This is where his day truly begins. Not with a shout or a command, but with this quiet communion with flour and water and time. He adds new flour from a sack in the corner. It puffs up in a soft, pale cloud in the lamplight. He adds water from a large jar. Then, a small, precious handful of coarse sea salt from a sealed pot. He washes his hands in a separate bowl, dries them, and then he begins. His hands sink into the mass. The first contact is cool and sticky. Then, as he begins to knead, a rhythm starts. He leans his whole weight into it. Push, fold, turn. push, fold, turn. The only sounds are the soft, sticky pull of the dough, the low thump as he pushes it down, and his own steady breathing. This is the most physical part of his day. Roman writers sometimes made fun of bakers for being thickly muscled, like mill slaves, but this strength is earned. It is calm, purposeful strength. For 20 minutes, maybe 30, he works the dough. His mind is free. He might think of his children, of a debt owed, or he might think of nothing at all, lost in the simple, repetitive motion. The dough transforms under his hands, from a shaggy, messy mixture into something smooth, elastic, and cohesive. It becomes a single, living thing. When it is ready, he makes a final, smooth mound. He covers it again with the damp cloth. Respite, he might think. You must rest now, and so must I for a little while. He leaves the dough to rise once more. He sits on a low stool, perhaps drinks a little more water. He looks at the faint gray light now seeping through the cracks around the bakery's shutters. The world is about to wake up, but he has already been living in it for hours. This time, this dark, quiet, solitary time, is the anchor of his day. It is his foundation. Now, his attention turns to the true center of his universe, the oven. It is a massive, domed structure of brick and tile, built into the wall of the bakery. It is big enough for him to almost crawl inside. Its mouth is a dark arch, closed now by a heavy iron or clay door. The outside is warm to the touch, still holding a ghost of yesterday's heat. His first task is to clean out the old ashes. He opens the small ash pit at the base of the oven and uses a metal scraper to pull out the fine, gray powder. It goes into a bucket to be used later. Ash is good for cleaning or for the garden. Then he must build the new fire, not in a fireplace beside the oven, but right inside the baking chamber itself. This is the direct firing method. He gathers his fuel, not large logs, but smaller, dry pieces of wood and kindling. Olive wood is good, it burns hot and clean. He arranges it carefully in the center of the oven floor. He crouches at the mouth of the oven, his body framed by the dark arch. He strikes his flint again. A spark flies into a nest of dry grass and twigs. A tiny flame licks up. He blows on it gently, his breath a soft, steady sound. The flame catches the kindling. A crackle begins. For the next hour, his world is this fire. He feeds it steadily, piece by piece. The flames grow, licking up the curved sides of the dome. The light is intense and orange, painting his focused face in flickering relief. The heat begins to radiate outward, pushing back the cool of the night. The bakery becomes warm. This is a skilled task. The fire must be hot enough and last long enough to heat the entire mass of the brick dome. He watches the color of the bricks inside. At first, they are their normal dull red. Then, as they soak in the heat, they begin to turn gray, then pale, then finally a glowing, ashy white. The soot from countless previous firings burns off the ceiling of the dome. When the entire interior is a uniform, radiant white, and the wood has burned down to a deep bed of glowing, red-hot embers, it is time. This is a critical, dangerous moment. He takes his long-handled rake, the rutabulum. It is a tool with a flat, wide metal head. He carefully, skillfully, begins to drag the mass of embers out of the oven onto the stone floor in front of it. He must get every last piece. A single ember left inside will burn a black spot onto a loaf. He works with a slow, sweeping motion. The embers glow fiercely, like a pool of molten earth. Once the oven is empty of fire, he takes his oven broom. It is a long stick with a bundle of fresh, green twigs tied to the end. He dips it in a bucket of water. It hisses. He then uses this wet broom to sweep the oven floor. The water hits the scorching hot brick with a violent sizzle and a great burst of steam that billows out of the oven mouth, smelling of heat and wet stone. He sweeps every last bit of ash and charcoal out. Now the oven is ready. It is a clean, empty, incredibly hot chamber. The heat stored in its thick brick walls is immense and steady. It will now bake, not with flames, but with stored, radiant heat. It is a perfect, simple piece of technology. It will hold its temperature for many hours, allowing batch after batch of bread to be baked evenly. Marcus feels the wave of dry heat on his face. He is sweating now, his tunic sticking to his back. But there is a deep satisfaction in this. The heart of his bakery is alive again. It is pulsing with heat, ready to transform the soft, pale dough into hard, golden, sustaining bread. He closes the oven door to let the temperature settle perfectly. And as he does, the first true sounds of the waking town begin to filter in from the street. The clatter of a cart, a distant greeting. His world is expanding beyond the warm, intimate circle of fire and dough. He returns to the trough. The dough has risen again. It is proud and puffy, its surface taut and dusted with flour. He gently presses it with a finger. The indentation springs back slowly, leaving a faint trace. It is perfect. He takes a sharp knife and cuts the large mass into portions. The weight of each portion is in his hands, not on a scale. He knows the feel of a 1-pound loaf, a 2-pound loaf. He begins to shape them. For the common, everyday bread, the panis quadratus, he takes a portion, rolls it into a smooth ball, and then flattens it slightly into a thick disc. Then, with the handle of his knife, he presses a deep groove around its circumference. Finally, with the blade, he cuts a pattern of 8 deep slashes across the top, from the central groove to the edge, creating 8 perfect wedges. This scoring isn't just decorative. It controls how the bread expands in the fierce heat of the oven, preventing it from tearing apart randomly. It also makes it easy to break apart neatly later, for sharing at a meal. Before baking, he might press a wooden stamp into the top. A simple design, his initials, MA, or a symbol like a sheaf of wheat or a crescent moon. This is his brand. If the bread is underweight or poor, people will know whose shop it came from. But his hands know other shapes. Perhaps he has an order from a nearby taberna that serves soldiers. He shapes a longer, denser loaf, then uses a stick to punch a clean hole right through its center. Panis militaris, the soldier's bread. He might make dozens of these. Imagine a rope, threaded through a dozen such loaves, slung over the shoulder of a legionary marching north to Germania. It is a bread made for travel, for hardness, for endurance. For a wealthier client, perhaps a local landowner's wife has requested softer, finer rolls for a dinner party. For these, he uses the whiter, more expensive semi-Lego flour. He shapes small, round rolls, and before baking, he might brush the tops with a little milk or egg to give them a finer, darker glaze. Or he might sprinkle them with poppy seeds or sesame seeds, imported from the East, a tiny luxury. His children might come in now, rubbing sleep from their eyes. His wife gives them a small piece of dough to play with. They sit in a corner, shaping their own tiny, misshapen loaves, which he will bake for them later. They learn the trade not through lessons, but through this quiet, daily absorption. The workbench is now full, a landscape of pale, waiting dough. Each shape tells a story of who will eat it: the common citizen, the soldier, the wealthy patron. Marcus is the quiet author of all these stories, written not in words, but in flour and fire. He takes his long, flat wooden peel, the pala. He sprinkles it with a handful of coarse bran so the dough won't stick. With a smooth, fluid motion perfected over 10,000 repetitions, he slides the peel under a loaf, lifts it, and with a confident push, sends it sliding deep into the oven. It lands with a soft, definite thud on the hot brick. Thud, thud, thud. One by one, the loaves take their place in the heat. He works quickly now, but never rushes. Rush leads to mistakes, to burnt bread, to lost income. He fills the oven, closes the door, and seals it. Now the waiting, the transformation is out of his hands. It is in the hands of the heat and the magic of the living dough itself. And as he waits, the smell begins to change. The simple, floury scent of raw dough is gone. It is replaced by the rich, complex, utterly comforting aroma of baking bread. It seeps out of the oven, out of the bakery, and into the street. It is the most powerful signal he can send. The day has truly begun. The front of Marcus's bakery is a different world from the hot, flour-dusted workshop in the back. It is the public face of his labor. Ilya has opened the heavy wooden shutters, revealing the shop counter that faces the street. She has wiped down the wide stone or wooden countertop. She arranges the wicker baskets, lining them with clean cloths to keep the bread warm and clean. She might set out a few small clay bowls, one with a few coins for change, one with a dollop of garum, the salty, pungent fish sauce, for customers who want a taste on their bread, another with a little olive oil, a finer offering. The first scent of baking bread has reached the street, and with it come the first customers. The social world of the Roman street converges here. A slave boy, sent by the cook in a large villa, arrives with a list. He buys 10 loaves of the panis quadratus and 2 of the finer-seeded rolls. Ilya knows him. She might slip him a small, warm roll for himself, a tiny kindness in his long day of errands. A construction worker, a fabri, stops on his way to a building site. He buys a single, large, hearty loaf. He will dip it in watered wine for his midday meal, sitting on a pile of stones. He pays with a small bronze as a matron, a materfamilias. From a modest home nearby comes herself. She buys bread for her family, but she also stays to talk for a moment. She asks after Ilya's children. She shares a bit of news heard at the fountain. A wedding in the neighborhood, a dispute between 2 shopkeepers. The bakery counter is a hub of information, as vital as the bread itself. Marcus emerges from the back, his face flushed from the oven's heat, carrying a large wooden board piled high with the first batch of bread. The loaves are a deep golden brown. They make a hard, crackling sound as they cool. The cantus panis, the song of the bread. It is a sign of a perfect crust. He transfers them carefully to the baskets. The sight is beautiful, orderly, abundant, warm. The transactions are simple. The coins are mostly bronze. A sestertius might buy several loaves. The coins clink as they are dropped into the money box, the arca. Ilya is careful, honest. Their reputation depends on it. Throughout the morning, this rhythm continues. Marcus bakes. Ilya sells. The bread moves from the heat of the oven to the warmth of a customer's hand. The sun climbs higher. The street becomes noisy with the sounds of other shops opening. The metal clang of the blacksmith, the call of the vegetable seller, the chatter of passing shoppers. Marcus might take a brief break. He stands in the doorway between the shop and the bakery, wiping his forehead with his arm. He drinks deeply from a cup of pasca, water mixed with vinegar and a little honey, quenches his thirst in the dry heat. He watches the flow of life. He is part of it, an essential, steady part. He is not a senator or a general, but without him and others like him, the city would grumble with hungry bellies. There is a quiet dignity in that knowledge. By midday, the frantic pace of baking is over. The oven is still hot, but most of its work is done. The main batch for the day is sold or waiting to be sold. The heat in the bakery is slowly becoming less intense. The hard, physical labor of the night and morning gives way to the slower, tidying labors of the afternoon. Let us pause in this slower afternoon moment and think about the journey of the bread itself before it ever reached Marcus's hands. Think of the grain. It began as a seed in the vast, sun-baked fields of Egypt or North Africa, or perhaps in Sicily. A farmer, much like Marcus in his devotion to rhythm, planted it. It grew under a harsher sun than Italy's. It was harvested by scythes, threshed by animal hooves on hard-packed threshing floors, and winnowed in the wind. Then it was poured into sacks and loaded onto a ship. A giant grain freighter, a corbetta, with a broad belly. It sailed across the Mediterranean, a journey of weeks, braving storms and pirates. It arrived at the port of Ostia, at the mouth of the Tiber. There, it was transferred to smaller river barges. Those barges were pulled by oxen or men along the towpaths of the Tiber, upriver to Rome itself. The grain was unloaded at the bustling port district and carried to the enormous, fortress-like public granaries, the Horia. It was stored in the dark, dry, rat-proof rooms. Marcus, or more likely the baker's guild he might belong to, would purchase a portion of this grain. But he doesn't grind it. That is another specialized, noisy, dusty trade. The grain goes to a mill, often powered by a blindfolded donkey walking in endless circles, turning heavy volcanic millstones from Pompeii or Orvieto. The ground flour is sifted. The coarser bran is separated from the whiter flour. The different grades are bagged up. Only then does it come to Marcus's bakery, as a soft, pale powder in a rough sack. The water in his jar came from a public fountain, fed by an aqueduct, a marvel of engineering that brought fresh mountain water dozens of miles to the city. Every day, someone in his household made the trip to the fountain, waited in line, filled heavy jars, and carried them home. This water was a public good, a gift of the empire to its people. The salt was from the salt pans at Ostia. Via Salaria, the salt road, got its name from carrying this precious mineral. It was used to preserve food, to pay soldiers, and to flavor bread. Marcus's small handful connected him to the sea and to ancient trade. So, in every loaf Marcus bakes, there is a whole invisible world. The sweat of the Egyptian farmer, the skill of the sailor, the grind of the millstone, the flow of the aqueduct, the taste of the sea. His hands are the final point in a vast, interconnected chain that stretches across the empire. He turns these sprawling, impersonal forces into something simple, tangible, and good. He makes the empire edible. He is a craftsman in a global system. But in his bakery, it is just him, his hands, his oven, and the daily needs of his neighbors. The sun is beginning its descent. The light in the bakery is long and golden, full of dancing dust motes. The intense heat of the day is softening. Marcus's work is not done, but its nature changes. It becomes a work of restoration and preparation. He must clean. He takes a stiff-bristled brush and sweeps the workbench, collecting all the dried bits of dough and spilled flour into a pile. This is not wasted. It will be added to the feed for the family's chicken or pig, if they have one. Nothing is thrown away. He scrubs the mixing trough with water and a handful of the fine ash from the oven. The ash is slightly abrasive and helps sanitize the wood. He rinses it clean and leaves it to dry, upside down. His tools, the peel, the rake, the broom, are wiped down and hung in their designated places on the wall. Order is everything. A lost tool in the morning dark is a disaster. He checks the oven. Its heat is now a gentle, residual warmth, perfect for the final task. He takes the small, odd-shaped loaves his children made, and perhaps a few smaller rolls for the family's next morning meal, and places them inside. They will bake slowly in the dying heat, ready for tomorrow. Ilya closes the shop front. She counts the day's coins. She might mark a tally on a wax tablet. So many loaves of this type sold, so many of that. It is simple accounting. The profit is small, but it is steady. Enough for food, for repairs to a tool, for a new tunic for a growing child. There is no great surplus, but there is security in the routine. Now, Marcus can finally clean himself. He is coated in a fine layer of flour and ash. It is in the lines of his neck, under his nails. He takes a basin of water, strips to the waist, and washes thoroughly. The water turns cloudy. He puts on a clean, everyday tunic. He feels lighter. The family eats their main meal, the cena. It is simple. A thick porridge of spelt wheat, the pulse. Some cooked vegetables, leeks, cabbage, beans, from their small garden plot. A few olives, a piece of cheese, and, of course, bread. The bread from today that didn't sell, or a loaf that baked a little too dark. It is still good. It is the foundation of the meal. They dip it in the broth of the vegetables. It fills their stomachs with a solid, quiet satisfaction. After the meal, there is one last, crucial ritual. Marcus goes to the trough. He pinches off a fist-sized piece of the dough saved from today's batch. He places it in a small, dedicated clay pot. He covers it with flour and water. This is tomorrow's fermentum, the soul of tomorrow's bread. He places the pot in a cool, dark corner. The cycle is preserved. The life of the dough is continuous. an unbroken chain stretching back through his father, and his father before him. He might sit outside his front door for a while as twilight falls, talking quietly with a neighbor. They speak of the price of grain, of the news from Rome, of the health of their children. Then, as the stars begin to appear, he goes inside. He checks the lock on the shop shutters. He says a quiet prayer at the small household shrine, thanking the Laras for the day's work and safety. He joins his family in the sleeping room. His body is tired, a good, honest physical tiredness. His muscles ache, but it is the ache of use, not of injury. As he lies down, the cool of the night feels good on his skin. He listens to the soft, even breathing of his family. In a few short hours, he will rise again. But for now, there is deep, dreamless, and well-earned sleep. The repetitive life of the Roman baker is complete, and it will begin again in the silent, star-filled hours before dawn. And so, our night with the Roman baker comes to a close. We followed him through the dark quiet, the birth of fire, the shaping of dough, the flow of customers, and the slow, tidy closing of the day. There was no drama in this story, no sudden fortune, no terrible loss, only the steady, metronomic beat of necessity and skill. Knead, fire, shape, bake, sell, clean, sleep, and begin again. To our modern minds, so focused on change, on novelty, on progress, such a life might seem small, confined, perhaps even tedious. But there is a profound peace to be found in that repetition, in the mastery of a few essential motions, in the deep, unspoken knowledge that your work matters in the most basic way. It feeds people, sustains life. There is a clarity in that purpose that cuts through the noise of a more complex world. His hands, rough and strong, knew exactly what to do without being told. His mind could be still. In the rhythmic kneading, in the patient feeding of the fire, there was a form of meditation, a unity of mind, body, and task. In our world of constant stimulation and uncertainty, there is a deep, almost aching comfort in imagining this predictable life, the certainty of the oven's heat, the trustworthy alchemy of flour, water, and time, the tangible result of effort held warm in your hand at the end of the process. It is a life rooted in place, in community, in the turning of the sun. It ends each day with the quiet, bone-deep fatigue that leads to honest sleep. A sleep untroubled by what the next day will bring, because he already knows. It will bring the dough, the fire, the bread. It will bring the familiar faces to the counter. It will bring the same good, hard, useful work. So as you drift towards sleep tonight, perhaps you can let go of the complexity of your own day, and for a moment imagine a simpler rhythm. The feel of cool, elastic dough. The sight of flames makes bricks glow white. The sound of a loaf singing as it cools. The smell that means home and morning and enough. It is a humble story, a human story. It is the story of hands making what the body needs, day after day, for 2,000 years. And there is a beautiful, quiet dignity in that. Thank you for listening. May your night be as peaceful as the baker's deep and well-earned rest. Good night.